Hello, Soundies. Welcome to our Sound for Video session. It's great to have you all here today. Hope you're having a good day and had a good week. We had a busy week here. Emma and I worked on a video reviewing a bunch of audio recorders, and we did this back in 2019. And it seems like a video that a lot of people appreciate when they're in the market for audio recorders, because it was actually probably our best performing video in the last several years. And so we did an update on that. And actually, it's interesting because it like on a week to week basis, it doesn't seem like necessarily a lot is changing. But when I compare the 2019 video to the 2022 video that we just did this last week, a lot has changed in the audio recorder world. So it was enjoyable to get to kind of reflect on that and talk a little bit about those recorders. So I hope that's of use to some of you if you are in the market, or at some point in the future when you are in the market. All right, let's go to our agenda and take a look at what we have going today. A couple things. First of all, this is a Q&A session, so we had several really good questions that were submitted ahead of time, and I'm definitely going to need some community help on some of these, as some of them are not within my domain of expertise. So looking forward to that, but there are also some, anyway, lots of good questions to cover. For those that are not aware, iZotope RX10 was released this week. So a new version of iZotope, and we're going to take a look, just a kind of a brief overview of what's new there. We'll obviously come back and do some more in-depth looks at the new features and how the new plugins and audio modules work. So more to come on that. Also, just for those that are not aware, if we've updated two of our courses, probably our two biggest courses. Number one is the Mix Pre course. There were several firmware updates over the last 12 months or so, and we've updated some of the course segments in that. So if you're already part of that course, those are available to you. They're just right there in the course curriculum. And then also for those that work with the Zoom F8, F8N Pro, or F8N, the model numbers are getting a little confusing, but we also updated the F8 course. So all of those models, we now are representing the latest firmware on all of those and also covering the new features within the F8N Pro. So for anyone that's already enrolled in that course, you have access to all of that as well. Okay. With that, let's go ahead and jump in first to our questions. Number one, these are some long ones here, so stick with me. First, I'm looking to create binaural field recordings in natural settings, such as the beach or a windy forest at night. I'd like to record the ambiance of the wind without the wind noise of the microphone, and to do so binaurally. Trying to choose between using an ambisonic microphone such as Core Sound Tetramic, first order ambisonic microphone decoded to binaural, with a Rycote Cyclone and Dead Cat for wind protection. What are your thoughts on the best route to go down in terms of wind protection, and what do you know about the difference between binaural recordings made using a dummy head versus binaural decoding from ambisonic? And here's the other option that Ewan is looking at, or making my own dummy head to use with the binaural in-ear mics like the DPA 4560 Core binaural headset microphone, and then covering the dummy head with a large dead cat designed to go over the Rycote Cyclone. I can't afford a Neumann KU100 dummy head, and I would be too worried about leaving it unattended outside anyway. I'm unsure what sort of capsule is used in a tetrahedral ambisonic microphone, and if they are inherently more susceptible to wind noise than the ones used in the DPA binaural. Okay, we'll go ahead and come back to the question here. Yeah, let's go ahead and go to our main camera here. All right. Well, a couple of things. First of all, I am not familiar with the Core Sound Tetramic, but I do have the Sennheiser ambisonic mic, and that particular one does use cardioid capsules. So there are 4 cardioid capsules aimed in different directions. And I don't know, I think what it comes down to, Ewan, is that if you go the binaural microphone route, you basically get what you get. And it's already, there's no encoding, special encoding you'll have to do. It's just binaural by its nature because you've recorded it on a dummy head from the start. Using an ambisonic microphone, you have more options in post, of course. That's depending on your perspective and what you're trying to achieve. That's either a wonderful blessing or it's a horrible curse. And it just really depends. It does give you more flexibility to do other things with it. But if you're just trying to go straight binaural, then I don't know I don't know there's necessarily an advantage there. I think there's probably more science involved in making dummy heads than just, for example, getting like a styrofoam head that are used to hold wigs. I think I've seen people make binaural dummy heads with those, but they don't have the same mass as a real head, and so I'm not sure if it necessarily translates 100%. And I think that's part of what you would be getting with the Neumann. And I realize that's a very expensive piece of equipment, but my take is I would probably just go with the ambisonic mic, but I would love, but this is an area where I don't have a ton of expertise, and so I'd love to get the input from anyone else who has done any sort of ambisonic or binaural recording. I have dabbled with both, but never really dug in deeply to both, and I don't even, for example, have really a lot of experience in terms of what the translation looks like when you capture with an ambisonic microphone and then essentially transcode it, or what is the term, encode it for binaural. I think that the overall benefit there is that you get a little bit more. You can essentially orient it first and then do the encoding. So in any case, would love to see if in the chat if anyone has other input for you, our friend Ewan here, and other things that he might consider when making that decision. So thanks for the question there, Ewan. Okay. We have a question from Camille. The MKH50 is an RF bias microphone. This makes it less sensitive to weather influences, moisture, than to a DC bias microphone, for example, Sheps. And let me just clarify what Camille's talking about there. In particular, what happens when you use a microphone in a particularly humid environment. What often happens if you go from say, for example, an indoor air-conditioned space to outdoors, a lot of times moisture can condense on the microphone, or especially the capsule, and that can affect the performance of the microphone. And oftentimes with a DC bias microphone, it affects it to the point where it's basically unusable. Whereas with with RF bias microphones, they tend to be more immune to that. But in both cases, there's some things you can do to prevent that issue. So here's the question that Camille asked. Why do people keep using DC bias? What are the differences and advantages compared to the RF bias version? Okay, that's an excellent, excellent question. We can go ahead and go back out to our camera here. My understanding of this is that RF bias microphone design is more complex to get it right, and potentially more expensive for manufacturing. That's why you'll notice that most RF bias microphones are not, you're not going to find RF bias microphones. The cheapest one I've seen, let me finish my thought before my thoughts keep jumping ahead. The cheapest RF bias microphone I have seen is a $500 Rode NTG5. I don't think I've seen any others that are less expensive than that. The RF bias microphones that I've worked with all sound fantastic. That's going to include all of the MKH series from Sennheiser. That includes the Rode NTG 3 and 5. And there are others as well. But I think that what it really comes down to largely is cost of the initial engineering and design, and also manufacturing is what it comes down to, Camille. And that's why I think you're still seeing plenty of DC bias. And honestly, DC bias can work well even in those humid conditions if you're very careful. And one strategy for doing that is that if you are going to be in that kind of situation where you're going to be, for example, in an air-conditioned hotel, and then going out into the outdoors where it is extraordinarily humid, what you can do is seal the microphone and its capsule before you go out, and then let it acclimate once you get outside for probably 15 to 30 minutes, and then take the microphone out of the sealed container. So even if you just use like a Ziploc bag or something like that, that way the moisture can condense on the outside of the bag. Once it acclimates, and it's less likely to happen. It's less likely to be an issue. So you can still make a DC bias microphone work even under those circumstances, generally. So, okay. Thank you for that one as well. All right, here's one from Andrew. I was recording Arishma at a speech she was giving in a large auditorium. She was using the housed handheld dynamic mic. Now, this is actually kind of a bit of a story, so stick with us here. My first mistake was not being prepared to record a feed directly from the mixing board. In my defense, I was in a foreign country and the venue had been changed on me. However, I was kicking myself for not bringing a couple more cables. Instead, I chose to put a Rode NTG3 attached to a Zoom F3 on the podium. Audio considerations aside, perhaps not the best aesthetic decision. My second and more glaring mistake was failing to engage phantom power on the Zoom F3. Oh no. Luckily, I had a lavalier mic, a Sanken COS 11D, and a body pack recorder, Tascam DR10, as a backup, and the recording was okay aside from some fairly persistent ringing feedback that existed in the hall. Real shame I didn't record from the board. I was able to clear some of the recording up with the tools in iZotope RX9 standard, but nowhere near as much as I would like. So my question relates to the horrifying possibility that I may have actually caused the feedback that was present in the lecture hall. If Arishma hadn't mentioned anything, I would have just put it down to the dynamics of the room and the shortcomings of the house PA system. But Arishma noticed that when she moved closer to where the shotgun mic was positioned on the podium, the ringing in the room was worse. My first thought was that maybe her handheld mic was picking up some reverb from the corner of the stage behind when Arishma turned the mic in a certain direction, and that her voice in the room just did not play well. However, now I'm also wondering if there was possibly some interference being created in the handheld mic from its proximity to the shotgun mic. Well, let me just, a couple things here. Here's a photograph that Andrew also sent over for us, so you can see on the stand there's the Rode mic on the podium, and then Arishma's holding that handheld mic. I want to put your mind at ease a little bit, Andrew. I think it's very unlikely that there was interference being created in the handheld mic from your little setup there, especially in light of the fact that you forgot to turn on phantom power. So I think there's a very, very low likelihood that that was the issue there. Let me just go ahead and play back a little bit of that recording. Andrew was kind enough to send over a bit of that. So let's switch over to the Mac here.
It was a lot more than...
1 second. We need to mix this right. So here's behind the scenes. And then back to audition. Here we go.
That. It was the type of people that we associated with. Competition, focus, fun, activity, laughter, and spiritual growth. Even today when I came in, just going into the chapel for a minute helped me feel calm within myself. And that is the type of education that this school presents us.
Okay. So that sounds like an extraordinarily live room, not unusual for an auditorium. So I think there's plenty. And I don't know if you sent me, Andrew, the version that you had processed in RX or not, but that sounds pretty typical of an auditorium to me. I think that it is important to keep in mind too that if a person is, as they're presenting and walking around on stage, that what they hear can change quite dramatically, and as they're carrying a handheld microphone, that can increase feedback as well. So I don't know what the front of house engineer did there. I mean, to me, it sounds pretty typical of an auditorium, so I wouldn't worry about it too much. I think if you had the NTG3 powered up, it probably would have sounded different. The thing to keep in mind too is when you record from a soundboard, just keep this in mind that it can sound extraordinarily dry, and if you're just getting a feed of an output from the soundboard, and this is something that Mike Stranks covered actually several years ago when he came on the live stream, is that it's also been EQ'd typically to tune it to that particular room, so the recording itself can sound very odd, less than ideal. So recording from the board can be an okay thing to do as a supplement, but I would always also have some room mics to be able to mix back in. Or one of the processes that Mike ran us through was actually tapping each of the microphone inputs and getting a feed of those directly to the recorder, so you could essentially make a separate mix. Or a lot of the digital boards nowadays, they can actually send you a mix that doesn't go through all the EQ. In essence, they can send you an auxiliary mix that has not been processed for the room. So that's another option potentially as well, depending on the board and the expertise of the engineer at the board. So lots of different options. I don't think you necessarily did anything horribly wrong. Well, I mean, you did forget to do Phantom Tower. We've all made mistakes along those lines. But I think overall it sounds pretty decent for a lavalier microphone. And the nice thing about the lavalier microphone, it looks like from the photo, let's see if we go back to the photo here. It's actually on the agenda. I don't know how much she moved around, but in light of the fact that the Rode mic wasn't working, she probably had a little bit more freedom to move around, which is probably good for, speakers oftentimes like to move a bit. But in any case, I don't think it was quite the failure that it sounds like from your point of view. I think in RX you can make it sound pretty decent. And yeah, there's lots of reverb, but there was also lots of reverb for the people that were there in person. So thanks for the question. All right, we're going to move on to the next question here. I have a Zoom H5 recorder that is part of my Mix Minus setup for podcasting. If I use USB from any computer, I've tried Mac and PC, to power the device, bus powered, I get a consistent whine that sounds to me like ground loop. As soon as I go to battery inside the Zoom or use a USB battery pack for power, the whine is gone. As this is a podcasting setup that I rarely take out of my recording space, it would be really convenient if I could always power the Zoom recorder via computer USB so that I can pull the audio right after I record and process it. I've tried numerous types of USB cables that claim to help with ground loop. I've tried a few USB connectors like the iFi Defender Plus placed in line between the computer and the Zoom recorder. None of this has helped. If the Zoom H5 is USB bus powered by a computer, I have to use some processing in post to remove the whine. Thanks for the question, Jeff. Let's see, numerous types of USB cables you've tried that claim to help with ground loop. And you've tried a USB connector like the iFi iDefender Plus. I'm not familiar with that particular product, but I can tell you that I did find when I connect my Allen & Heath SQ5 mixer up via USB. It does have a USB connection to a computer, and I used it basically like a sound card or an audio interface for a period of time. If I just used a standard USB cable, I did get all sorts of noise, and it was picking up a lot of noise. What I ended up doing is I ended up using a USB cable that had ferrite cores on both ends of the cable near the connector. And that seemed to solve the problem in my particular case. So that's what I did in that case. I don't know if that would help in your case, but that's what I found. USB cables can absolutely pick up interference. And there is this notion, some people seem to think, going back to, if you think about here in the United States at least, if you go to a Best Buy store back in, I don't know if they still do this. Maybe they do. They used to, when you went to go buy a TV, they'd try to sell you this, $175 HDMI cable from Monster Cables, and claiming that it was much cleaner and it would address any issues with interference and so on and so forth. In any case, I had a friend who said, I didn't buy that crap. Those cables don't do it. It's a digital cable. How can it be any different? What happens with digital, though, is especially in cases where there's error correction going on, like with USB, it'll resend the data if there is too much interference to really understand what's been sent. And so it can actually slow the transmission of information down. So, and you can be picking up that, noise and such like that. So, ferrite cores might help, something worth looking at. You can either buy a USB cable with the ferrite cores already installed, or you can actually just purchase the ferrite cores independently and attach them to the cable that you have already. Might be worth trying another cable though. So I hope that helps, Jeff. Okay, the next question is from Alexander. I know it's a bit short notice for today's show, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts of iZotope's new RX10 release. I was part of the beta program and was quite unhappy with the UI change in Repair Assistant, as well as the very inaccurate speech-to-text functionality they brought to the app. I believe I used the phrase word salad to describe the results it gave me on fairly clear dialogue recordings. Love to hear your thoughts. Be well. All right, Alexander, let's take a look. So we'll hop over here to iZotope RX. And a couple of things. It looks very, very similar to RX9, so there's no major differences here, except that number one, we have search capability over there, but we have text to speech, or speech to text, I guess. They call it the text navigation, and in this case, the word lane. You can see up here, it actually has text identifying what is being said there, or at least in theory, what's being said there. And let me just scoot this back over here. Let me play this, and then we'll go ahead and see what the words say there. Let's now move to the MixPre 2 series. The MixPre 2 series includes 3 recorders, the MixPre 3.2, the MixPre 6.2, and the MixPre 10.2. All of these have 3, 4, or 8 XLR inputs, plus a 3.5mm stereo input, which is where you get the numbers, sort of. Okay, and this is what it translated it to. Let's now move to the mixed Pretus. The mixed Pretus churs includes 3 recorders, and Tolevis have 3, 4, or 8 exertion puts plus a 3.I-meter stereo put, which is where he gets a number, sort of. So, Alexander, I have to concur. It's a bit word salady there. It's first generation of speech-to-text translation from iZotope, and yeah, it definitely needs some work. I'm not the clearest speaker, I realize that, but that one was pretty rough. If I go to some of the others over here, there's just one exception in any case. Let's see what I actually said. 3 is just one exception in any case. Yeah, that one did right. They are great recorders. They all support wide dynamic range 32-bit float recording. This one actually said they are all great records instead of recorders. They also, and again, I was talking fast here. Great records. They all support why don't a Grange 32-bit float recording. So, yeah, a little bit rough. What I think is neat about this feature, and as presuming that they refine it over time, is I love that you can just click here to select a phrase. That's really nice, actually. The translation itself, yeah, really rough, but I think it's a step in the right direction. Would I say that, oh my goodness, you have to upgrade from whatever version of RX you're on right now to get this? Probably not. I mean, it's entirely up to you as to whether or not there's value in it, but I think it's a good direction. But yeah, the translation itself is not so great just yet. And then when you collapse it, it just shows you the first few words of each section here. There's one that starts with Yeffies. Yeffies are low bats, sir, but I do find them. It's good. Actually, it's really, really good for a laugh. But that's not why you would buy this. So, yes, Alexander, the translation isn't anywhere near where it needs to be. But it is interesting. It's an interesting step. Another thing, if we go back over to RX here, you mentioned the Repair Assistant. So the Repair Assistant in the past, I have to confess, I found it basically useless. If you told it to try and figure out what was going on, and just suggest, I just never found it useful. I just turned it off and went and did it myself. Went to all the individual modules that I needed. Let's give this one a go. Let's see what happens. I'm going to play without, and then I'll play with. Let's now move to the MixPre 2 series. The MixPre 2 series includes 3 recorders, the MixPre 3.2, the MixPre 6.2, and the MixPre 10.2. All of these have 3, 4, or 8 XLR inputs, plus a 3.5mm stereo input, which is where you get the numbers, sort of. 3 is just one exception. In any case, they are great recorders. They all support wide dynamic range 32-bit float recording, but they also have some other features that you don't see on the Zoom F-Series. For example, they have analog input limiters for each independent channel, and so those are the things that prevent your audio from clipping when you're not recording in 32. Okay. I mean, it wasn't making a massive difference. This isn't a horrible, horrible recording, but it was making something of a difference, so I think that was interesting. It was, let's see, this is denoise here. I'm a little unclear on this UI. Like, okay, so this big, huge one is denoise. I didn't tweak that one at all. Oh, okay, and then the voice here, you just choose which type of thing you're actually processing. Okay, that's fair. And actually, it looks like there's a learn thing. So does that mean you have to highlight and then learn? It's training the repair assistant. Okay, yeah, so let's go ahead and try this again. I will say, Alexander, I'm not, it's hard for iZotope to disappoint me on the repair assistant because I was pretty disappointed on the first round. So any changes they made aren't probably going to break my heart, but let's see what we get here. So now I'm going to go ahead and let's run through it again with a preview. Let's now move to the MixPre 2 series. The MixPre 2 series includes 3 recorders, the MixPre 3.2, the MixPre 6.2, and the MixPre 10.2. All of these have 3, 4, or 8 XLR inputs plus a 3.5mm stereo input, which is where you get the numbers, sort of. 3 is just one exception. In any case, they are great recorders. Okay, again, not a huge difference. I see you do have to learn first. That it did sound a little bit different there, and you can notice that when we did do the learn, it pulled the de-esser out entirely. De-reverb didn't change. It reduced the noise reduction, and I think I can't remember if it increased or decreased the declick. I think it changed that a little bit. Declick was not on whatsoever because it was, declip was not on because it didn't need to be on because there's no clipping audio here. So, I mean, I know you're not a big fan of it, Alexander, but I think it's actually a step forward from the previous one. I think what they're doing here instead is instead of just giving you a blank canvas and telling you, okay, go run your audio through this, and then it would suggest a bunch of modules from over here on the right and set them. It was a massive miss. I mean, there are cases where it actually made the audio substantially worse with the old one. This one didn't seem to damage things a whole lot. It just added some declick for the voice, tiny bit of 30% denoise, tiny bit of de-reverb, but I think it was done much more tastefully than in the past. So that's my general assessment of that. But let's go take a look at what else is new in RX. And let me just say, actually, we're not going to go. That's the marketing material. I don't want to look at that. I want to look at over here. Let's just run through the new features. So text navigation, we already looked at that. That's the automatic speech to text transcription. It's only English for now, so it doesn't work with other languages, and arguably doesn't work that well with English either. Oh, by the way, background. Let's go back to the main camera. Full disclosure, I've purchased this with my own money. However, before it was released, iZotope did send me a license to use it pre-release, so I did get a chance to look at it over the last about week and a half. So just full disclosure, but I did buy it myself. I don't want any weirdness around being able, feeling some obligation to say things a certain way. And since I use it so much, I just paid for the upgrade license. Okay, back to what is new in this version here. The repair assistant, before we move on to that, in the advanced version, multiple speaker detection. So if you have multiple people within the audio clip that you're looking at, it'll actually identify the different people, which is kind of interesting. We'll have to give that a test. So in essence, it color codes the different people. So that can actually be really useful if you're working on a long piece of spoken word content. Being able to quickly find things. This will help with that, which is really useful. Repair Assistant, fully redesigned, new analysis processing, streamlined UI. And there's evidently a plugin version now too, so you can use it within other digital audio workstations or perhaps even video nonlinear editors. On the advanced version, Spectral recovery has been updated. They're using new neural nets, so they're using neural nets to identify the type of different algorithms for repairing different parts of the spectrum. So evidently this delivers substantially better quality for resynthesizing upper frequencies, and it can now resynthesize lower frequencies as well. So that'll be definitely worth a look. The dehummer has been updated yet again. In version 9, the new version of dehum, the adaptive version, was very, very good. Evidently they've updated it even more to address electromagnetic interference and other complex noises that change pitch over time without having to learn a noise profile, which is pretty impressive if it indeed works. Selection feathering. This is actually a feature that was already there, but it's been moved from preferences to the main window. And so essentially what that does is it does some, just like in Photoshop, you probably are familiar with the concept. When you select something, you can also feather that selection so it sort of rolls off. So it's not so abrupt, but you can do that as well with frequency selections now when you're working on the spectrum here in RX10. And then just a couple more things. First time user experience, they have some tours and automatic preset migration. So when you're coming over from RX9, it brings your presets to RX10. So not a huge number of changes in RX10. I think what's happened here is that iZotope is moving. They have for the last, what now, it seems like 3 years, are moving to an annual cadence of releases. So every year they're going to release something in the RX line, it sounds like. What that means in practical terms is each update is probably not going to include as many things as we were used to receiving in the past. The very first version of RX I used, I think, was RX3 or 4. And it was a few years in between until I think the next version came out. And when it, even then, it was kind of a steady. There were some breakthrough releases, it seemed like. I'm trying to remember. I think 7 was a pretty big one. In any case, just looks like some differences here in terms of they're going to be pretty much every year now. Whereas before, I think that period of time varied a little bit more. So we'll come back and take a closer look at those in the coming weeks. All right, let's go to the chat and see what questions we have over in the chat. And while Danny is looking those up, I'm going to take a sip of water here. Okay. Kevin. Kevin is biased. I like RF, but bump. Okay, I'll stop now. Hope you and the family are well. Thank you so much, Kevin, and likewise hope you are doing well also. It's good to have you here. And you do like RF biased, actually, because I know that you use a Rode NTG3, which is an RF biased microphone. So that joke works especially well in your case. All right, Synergy, your sound, your vision. Oh, thanks so much. Just halfway through with the mixed pre-course, better to start from scratch now. No, the biggest updates were in the audio interface segment. So if you've already gotten past that and you want to go back and take a look at that, that was the one that was updated about 2 weeks ago. And also the channel menu segment was also updated. Those were the two big ones. So hopefully that gives you just, so you don't have to go do the whole thing all over again. But those are the two main ones that were updated there. Mike, rather than a dummy head, you can use a Jecklin disc for binaural recording. Okay. Thank you for sharing. I have no idea what that is. Maybe we'll look that up. But thank you so much, Mike, for sharing.
Here's another
Jecklin disc.
Okay, we'll do that one.
We'll go ahead and take a look here. So Jecklin disc, let me go ahead and zoom in a bit here. Here is a photo of it here. It's a sound absorbing disc placed between two microphones to create an acoustic shadow from one microphone to the other. The resulting two signals can possibly produce a pleasing stereo effect. There you go. Thank you, Mike. That's one that I haven't encountered before. Cool. Rode have an ambisonics mic, which is well thought of. I think it comes with software so you can decode in multiple ways. Yes, that's the NTSF, I believe, which stands for sound field.
And then this is related to the PA mic thing.
Oh, this is back to Andrew's question about the PA and the mic. Sounded like his mic was recording the PA sound as well as the direct sound picked up by the mic. Yes, absolutely. So I assume that Arishma was wearing that COS 11D, that lavalier mic. And so it's picking up her initial sound plus all the sound that's going out of the PA system, reflecting off all the walls and other hard surfaces and coming back up to stage. So definitely. And that's where the voice de-reverb might come in handy. And Mike also on the same topic, the apparent increase in feedback may be due to the mic picking up reflections from the podium surface as well as from the room. Yeah, that's definitely possible as well. Steve Isaacson asked, what sound level do you recommend for YouTube videos? I recommend -14 LUFS. And in fact, if we come to YouTube and we go to volume versus loudness? The video that comes up is this one right here. So this is one that I did back in 2021, understanding how to loudness normalize your audio for video. And there's another one, this very first one actually that came up, loudness versus volume versus loudness, explains the difference between those. So it's not a peak level. That's the secret. Old school is, just normalize to -0.1 dB full scale and you're good to go. Or others did other things. The people that the engineers that were doing work for TV would often say, okay, well, we're going to normalize to an RMS level. Maybe if your audio, overall program audio is at -18 dB RMS average over the course of the entire program, then you're in a good spot. And just make sure you're not clipping anywhere in between there and meeting all the other specs. But these two videos will get you exactly what you need. This one in particular is the practical one that tells you exactly, or shows you exactly how I loudness normalize. And again, I usually target -16 for YouTube. Great question. Okay, is iZotope RX10 officially compatible with the soon-to-be released Mac Ventura OS? No, I assume not. If it's not well, certainly if it's not released yet. Usually, what happens is all the manufacturers and all the software providers will do that certification once it's been released. The problem now is that Ventura is it's a changing thing. It's still in beta, so until it's fully released, they don't usually certify. But we'll see how. It's interesting. It really depends on how many changes that Apple makes to the AV foundation components of the operating system as to how long it takes that's a big factor in how long it takes those software companies to certify their software as compatible. It took a while to get the Apple Silicon versions of iZotope RX. That actually just happened, I think, earlier this year, a few months ago. And Apple Silicon's been out since were they released in really late 2020, early 2021? So in any case, it can take a while. Not officially compatible yet.
Okay, this one has 2 parts.
2 parts from Jonathan. I want to run hybrid meeting using Rodecaster Pro 2 where I want to provide mixed audio to in-house speaker and ATEM Mini Extreme for live stream while providing mix minus to Zoom guests and participants. Unfortunately, the Rodecaster Pro 2 has only a main out without any auxiliary. How do I output my main mix to in-house speakers and at the same time send the same mix to the ATEM Mini Extreme? Okay. It depends. If you are using a software encoder on the computer for streaming, then that makes it a little easier, because then what you can do is you can use the monitor outputs on the Rodecaster to feed the house PA system. Those are essentially just line level outputs. And then you have the Rodecaster connected to the streaming computer via USB, and you can feed all of the audio from the Rodecaster into, say, for example, OBS or whatever other streaming app you're using, and that takes care of the streaming into the house. Now, that is all dependent on whether or not you're using a software encoder. If you're trying to stream directly from the ATEM, that's where it gets more complex, and you're essentially going to have to split the output signal from the Rodecaster in some fashion. So that could be where something like, it depends, do you need a stereo mix, or would mono be good enough? If mono is good enough, then using a mic splitter like we showed several weeks ago, you can actually use that to do a line level as well, to split the line level, but that can actually put out multiple mono signals. So it depends on if you're doing stereo or mono, and if you are or are not using a software encoder to encode your live stream. The easiest way is if you are using something like OBS, then you don't have to worry about splitting it. The physical outputs, the monitor outputs on the back of the Rodecaster feed the PA system, and via USB you feed the audio into OBS or any other streaming app, streaming encoder app. So that's the easy version, or the easiest way to do it. Hopefully that helps. All right, Jeff, try a Thunderbolt cable, which works with USB, but they're far superior cables. Oh, that was for the question about issues with the H5. So I think the H5 probably can't use a Thunderbolt cable, because the H5 I think has a USB mini or micro output. I don't think it's a USB-C, unfortunately. All right.
Speech to text.
Alexa and Siri, it is not. Okay, I got it. Oh, the text to speech, got it. Okay, or speech to text, got it. Okay, yeah, no, it's not. They'll get there. A lot of other people have solved that problem, so I think they'll figure it out. That's why the audio to text isn't working well. It's set for English. You're speaking American. Oh, thank you, Mike. You're so right. Yes, I am speaking American. I always get completely confused with iZotope, their packages. How to update only RX when having the post-production version? Ooh, I don't know if I can solve that problem either. That's, we can come back over to the Mac here. Okay, so, well, first off, you can check the loyalty deals, because if you have a previously licensed version, it's worth checking that first. I'm not going to do that here and now, but if you go, RX is included in a variety of different things. I think it's part of the music production suite. There's RX post-production suite. This is the one I have. This includes RX10 Advanced, Dialogue Match, Insight 2, which is basically metering, Symphony 3D and Stratus 3D reverbs, and exponential audio. And more. I don't know. Oh yeah, more includes Neutron, tonal balance. Not a lot of the Nectar 3 Plus as well. By the way, that's actually, to me, that's worthwhile. Although I don't think they've updated that. I think that's just, that didn't get a refresh here. It's just RX that got the refresh. Yeah, I agree. I think it's interesting because it is a pretty, let's see here, your pricing options, compare editions. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot going on here. I don't know the short answer. There's not an easy answer from my point of view. It's a complex set of pricing and packaging. Okay. So far, I'm only using mono, so is it reasonable to send main left to house and main right to ATEM or vice versa? Yes, that's absolutely fine. But also, again, if you're already using OBS or something like it, don't even need to do that. Just send the audio. I mean, if you're maybe if you could clarify that, are you using a software encoding app or are you streaming directly from the Ethernet port on the ATEM? That I think makes a big difference. What type of filter do you recommend for getting rid of mic hiss in post? I recommend using, if we were going to come over here to RX, for example, the easiest one to use is probably the voice denoise. It's very straightforward, but also, I mean, it depends on what the hiss looks like. A lot of times a high pass filter can help too if it's a low frequency stuff, but oftentimes hiss is broader band than that. But something like a voice denoise, I would generally set it to adaptive mode, dialogue gentle as a start. I would reduce the reduction to about 6, and I would start there, see how that does for you. And it's better, in my experience, it's generally better to do multiple passes with less reduction than one pass with more reduction. So the default, interestingly, is 12. I would actually start closer down to 6. So those would be the default settings I'd start here if you're using something like iZotope RX voice denoise. And this is included in all 3 versions: Elements, Standard, and Advanced. Oh, another one, Clarity VX from Waves is another great option. Clarity VX, in fact, rivals voice denoise. Sometimes one of them will do a little bit better than the other. It just depends on the recording, but Clarity VX is another one. And they have an entry-level version of that too, like basically a one-knob version. It's really simple to use, works pretty well.
Okay, we're still continuing the ATEM thing.
We're back to ATEM. Okay.
There's like 4 comments.
4 comments regarding the ATEM. I'm using the ATEM encoder to live stream. Also, I am using Zoom meeting to bring in participant speakers and send audio to audience. Okay, that's fair. Then if it's in mono, then you can just do what we talked about before. Okay, all good there. You got it, Jonathan. Putting line level signals through mic splitters is generally okay, but in some situations with cheaper splitters and hot signals, it's possible to saturate the transformer. Yes, so you're going to want to get a quality one if you do go down that route. But it sounds like since he's doing mono, he has the outputs he needs, so should be all good. Hey, Curtis, would you put the Sennheiser MKE2 on the same level of the Sanken COS 11D? There are a couple of jobs that requested the COS 11D, but I think that the MKE2 would work well enough. They sound different, but yeah, I mean, I haven't used the MKE2 a ton, but yeah, in my mind at least, they're relatively similar in terms of overall quality. They sound a little bit different. Different sizes. The COS 11D is probably more durable, physically durable, but if they've requested it, you can happily add that to your kit, or to the rent as part of the overall cost of you doing service, and just add that as a rental. That's another option as well. But yeah, MKE2 is not an inferior microphone. Then I don't know if they're requesting it because it's a kind of a sound signature for them. If that's the case, then I would see if there's any additional budget to make that happen, whether you buy one or rent one. Also, this might be a long shot, but do you think the MixPre 2 can take a 512 gigabyte USB drive? I think so. I don't know what its limits are. Let's go to the Sound Devices site. We'll go to support. We will go to, let's see, approved media for the MixPre. This is SD cards, thumb drives. The only ones that are approved are up to 64 gigabytes, and there's evidently an unapproved, that looks like that's an SD card. Actually, these are unapproved. These actually fail, so don't use those. Okay. Any case, yeah, these looks like they're suggesting no more than 64 gigabytes in this particular card for USB thumb drives.
That's under discontinued.
Oh, Here we go. Up to 128 gigabytes by PNY. So anyway, definitely go to the support page and look at the approved media for MixPre. That'll give you, you should have a little bit more assurance. They've done official testing and approval of these particular products. And they even give you the product numbers, which is really helpful. Like right there. Cool. Good question. All right, Bambi Broadcast. I have a MixPre 6 with noise assist. Are there ideal settings to get rid of the air cooler noise? I currently have noise assist at -10 and low cut filter at 160. Oh, that's pretty aggressive. Even with noise assist, the audio has a lot of coloring when the AC is turned on. Yeah, well, I think at that point, that's quite a bit. That's pretty heavy on the noise assist. I'm assuming you're close miking. Noise assist works best when you can maximize your signal to noise ratio, and you do that generally. That one way to do that, of course, is get the microphone closer. And the closer it is, the better it's going to be able to manage the other noise in the room generally. That's quite a lot. I think the other thing to look at is microphone placement, microphone choice. I don't know what kind of microphone you're using, but if you can use a dynamic mic, that'll help a bit as well. And also positioning the mic so that it's null on its polar pattern is towards the source of the air conditioning. That can help quite a bit as well. So those are some thoughts there. But 160 hertz on a low cut filter is pretty aggressive, and for men's voices at least. But for women's voices, you can probably get away with that pretty transparently. But for men's voices, that's definitely going to thin out the sound a bit. Doug asks, we're producing videos for YouTube, Vimeo, etc. In some, there will be a single person. Some will be 2, 3, or 4 people. Would the Sennheiser MKH416 be the best choice for both studio and location? I'm curious, Doug. Are you going to have somebody like hand booming the mic, or are you going to have a separate mic for each of the 4 people when you do 4 people? But it's a fine mic for both studio and location work.
Here's another. I think
There's some. One second here. In studio, you're going to want to have, if it is indeed a studio and it has some sound treatment, I think that'll be fine. If it's really a reverberant space, that's where things can get a little dicey with shotgun microphones. But otherwise, yeah, it can be a great choice. Okay.
Same thing, he just said it a different way.
Okay. Oh, fellow drummer here with the... I think it's a little bit of a stretch to call me a drummer. I own a drum kit, but Danny would say, I think probably, no, he hasn't even had any lessons yet. Yeah, I think it can be an okay mic on a stand. It's not enough to capture 4 people, no, with one mic. But if you have a separate one for each person, that can work better. And then you're probably going to want to do some sort of mixing. Probably auto mixing, especially the closer the people are to each other. The more you're going to have to kind of, you want to space people out as much as you can and then have a separate mic for each of them. In an ideal circumstance. That gets expensive, I realize. Harry, have you discussed Adobe's new AI audio restoration drag and drop through the web browser yet? Sounds very impressive. Pardon the pun. I have not tried it. I don't even know. Adobe AI noise reduction or audio restoration. Actually, audio restoration. I'm usually pretty skeptical of these kind of things, but let's see. Not pulling anything up here. Repair and restore audio. I don't know if this is it. No, I don't think that's it. I'll have to take a look at that. We'll see what we can find out about that. Sounds like there's a website you can just drop your audio clips on and it will do some processing. This doesn't appear to be that, though. What's the next piece of sound gear you want to purchase and why do you want it? Jeff, that's a good question. I don't have any burning need for anything, to be honest. However, Danny's laughing over here in the corner when I said that. Um, yeah, I don't really have. I mean, would I love to upgrade all of my wireless to Sound Devices A20s? Yes, but I don't really have a need to do it. The A10s are working just fine. I do have one of the A20s and 4 of the A10 transmitters. Would I like to upgrade my A10 receivers to A20? Yes, but I don't really have a need to. Like, it's not affecting my ability to do what I need to do right now. So that's not really it. I don't have a need to buy a Aton Digital Kantar X3, even though I'd love to play with one. Danny says, no, that's the price of a automobile. Yeah, I don't have anything burning at the moment. I would say, oh, actually, I don't have anything at the moment. Great question, though, Jeff. Maybe a second Shelford channel so that we could have a mic for Danny. Let's move on to the next one. She's gonna roll up into a ball, and because she's laughing so hard over here. Question: I purchased the Art Cleanbox Pro upon your recommendation. What set of cables should I buy to use with the Yamaha KB into the Rodecaster Pro 2 hooked into Logic Pro for making music with voice recordings? Let's see. With the Cleanbox Pro, you're getting audio into your Rodecaster Pro 2. I don't think you, let's see, what's it? Oh, your Yamaha keyboard. Okay. I don't think you necessarily need a Cleanbox Pro for that. So you can run the Yamaha keyboard directly in the Rodecaster Pro. That'll be connected to your computer via USB, and then that goes straight into Logic. So I think you'll just need whatever cables your Yamaha keyboard needs. So if it's probably a 1/4 inch TRS, a pair of 1/4 inch TRS outputs, and so on one side it'll be tip ring sleeve 1/4 inch, and then on the other side it'll be XLR to go into the Rodecaster. Actually, give me just a moment. Let me check the Rodecaster. I can't remember if it has combo inputs or not. I'll be right back. It turns out it does have combo inputs. Let's see. So you just need 1/4 inch to 1/4 inch TRS cables, assuming that your keyboard outputs balanced audio. So if it doesn't output balanced audio, then you'll put the Art Cleanbox Pro between your Yamaha keyboard and the Rodecaster Pro 2. So again, I don't know what your Yamaha outputs. Probably, if it is unbalanced audio that it outputs, then you'll have I think I'm trying to, let me get the Cleanbox Pro. Okay. For unbalanced inputs, the Cleanbox has the option of XLR. No, that's balanced input. Unbalanced input, it has RCA, left and right, or it has 3.5 millimeter stereo unbalanced TRS. So if your keyboard outputs RCA, then you could just get a set of RCA to RCA cables, or if it outputs 1/4 inch unbalanced, then you can get a 1/4 inch to RCA set of cables, 2 of them, one for left and one for right. And then that'll go into the Art Cleanbox Pro on the front, and then you'll go out XLR to the Rodecaster. But the Rodecaster actually, I think the Rodecaster can take instruments, so I don't think you even need you don't even need a Cleanbox. You should be able to go straight into the Rodecaster. Save you some trouble. Okay, hopefully that helps, Jules.
Okay, here's an interesting current events discussion.
Current events. Okay. Aloha, Archie. What type of microphone is King Charles using for ceremonies at the moment?
Okay, and here we have an answer.
We have an answer. They're cabled capacitor condenser mics and cost a lot of money. So there's some sort of condenser. They're Sheps. Oh, okay, so they're the German Sheps microphones.
Yes, okay.
Nat Ruff is an audio geek and I can always find ways to spend money. Yes, but your wife probably isn't standing right here. Ah, Harry, that's a great idea. Drum lessons. I love it. That's the next piece of audio gear that I need. Drum lessons. Talking about low-cut filters at 160 hertz, the Sennheiser MZF 8000 filter module for the 8000 RF series has a -3 dB roll-off at 160 hertz. There was a special order 75 hertz version, but it's now discontinued. Yeah, Sennheiser has a tendency, it seems like, I know on the MKH50, the inbuilt high-pass filter is quite aggressive. It's like I think it's centered at 250 hertz. And I think those are really designed for pretty severe wind situations. I can't imagine why else you'd want something that sits that high. Even a 160 hertz is a little bit on the higher end from my point of view. So thanks for that, Daniel. Okay, well, thanks everybody for coming to our Sound for Video session. It's been a pleasure having you here. In the meantime, until next week, get out there and make some great sound, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care, everybody.